Hello and welcome to the Talking NorCal podcast, the official podcast of Active NorCal. I am your host, Zach O'Brien. With me here, it's Rain Dance Bob. How you doing, Bob?
I'm rain dancing in the streets, baby.
Ooh, it's a wet winter month here in Northern California. We couldn't be happier. We have a really fun episode today. We are talking with the CEO of Michelob Ultra. You heard that right. The CEO of Michelob Ultra is coming on the Talking NorCal podcast. When I say that, I mean the Chief Exploration Officer, Adam Marland. I've known of his work for quite some time. We share a lot of his photos. He's a great photographer. He lives in Southern Oregon, but does most of his content in the Shasta area. And he just so happened to be the one person out of like 100,000 applicants that won this awesome experience from Michelob Ultra, and he traveled to all these national parks, and so he's got a really cool story about living in van life. So we will get to that here shortly. First, be sure to subscribe to the Talking NorCal podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher, we're on Facebook. Yes, Facebook now has podcasts, which is interesting. I don't know if people out there listen to it, but on Facebook, but please listen to us.
We welcome
subscribe
it.
to us.
Yep.
We welcome it. But we have so much to talk about. Let's just hop into this episode with the Tahoe's Hella NorCal.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and there are no salad dudes who kick it down in Santa Cruz. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal.
The bomb cyclone. It was the bomb. The atmospheric river that hit Northern California this weekend was pretty intense, and we have a lot to talk about. But first, I got to give you credit because I'm pretty sure it is your musical acumen that brought us here today. For anyone who doesn't recall or wasn't listening to us back then, Bob created some of the greatest rain dancing music that Northern California has ever seen. And I am pretty sure it has put us in this position to refill our waterways, to have, healthy snowpack, to put out the fires. The Calder Fire and the Dixie Fire were both put out by the storm. So great news on all fronts. What say you, young Jeezy Bob over here?
Listen, I don't want to take all of the credit, but I'll take 75% of it because due to creativity and trying to do anything in my powers to will rain in this direction, I just created some fun sounds, and we have played them over and over because we talked about it offline. This is a lot of a very weather-oriented podcast, and we didn't mean for it to be that way, but a lot of the things that we talk about on the show are very much affected by either lack of rain or snowpack or fires, etc. So I made these sounds, and this is the first year, and who knows how long that we're almost through fire season without there being really any fires lit right now because of the rain.
It's so the second rainiest October on record in many different municipalities around Sacramento, I believe. San Francisco, it's top 5. Redding, I believe it's up there. The second snowiest winter, both in October, in both Mammoth and Tahoe. So it's working. It is working. So before we get into everything, let's hear a couple.
Which one would you like? Your favorite? Just start off
Dealer's
with the best.
choice. Yeah.
Please make it rain, do 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 do. Make it rain, do 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 do. Make it rain, do 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 do. In Northern Cali.
That was all of our least favorite one. But
It seems so long ago that you did these, and yet it just it's coming to fruition. It's kind of crazy.
Well, it did come to fruition. I looked in the forecast, and there's not like a lot of rain, at least in the local Sacramento area, for the next 7 days. Maybe next
second rainiest
Thursday,
October on record.
But
I'm just saying.
Either way, we'll take what we can get, and this is all fantastic news.
Yeah. So we'll play the rest of those as we get into everything. But let's do. Let's go through all the news from this storm over the weekend. What do we got?
So the first story is one where we've already been talking about, really. Storm hits Northern California as a Category AR5, the strongest type of atmospheric river.
Yeah, so this is how rare it was, right? They have measurements from AR1 to AR5 in terms of an atmospheric river, and this hit the top one, the highest veracity of storm that you can get. I read somewhere, and I have not been able to, get like an actual expert to say this, but it brought as much water that flows through the Mississippi River. Like, that's how much water was coming through in this atmospheric river. It is only the second time we've seen an AR5 atmospheric river in October in 40 years.
In California
in 40 years. So it was pretty rare. And, I know there's a lot of like different records that were broken, but from my point of view, it started raining and it just did not stop. And I was just inside all day. I kept looking out, it was pouring, kept looking out, it was pouring. So I'm sure other people had different experiences. That was mine.
Yeah, I didn't leave the house that day either. I just kept looking outside, incredibly happy to see it raining, especially as hard as it was. And if you look at this, like the map that we have on the activenorcal.com article about this story, the river, you see the flow of the river, and it's almost like a direct hit to where we needed it the most. It was just like, let's not just hammer Northern California that has been hit by all of these terrible, terrible wildfires, but also in kind of getting into the Tahoe area, which is bringing snow, which is also going to bring recreation. It's going to get people to travel here. This is exactly what we needed. This time of year, we haven't had a rain like this in October in so long, so we're not used to it. And so we need to drink it in. We need to appreciate this. It was really only one day of rain here in Sacramento, and we've solved so many problems. We're going to talk about some of the negative impacts that were had by a storm of this magnitude, but as you mentioned, and I like how you put this, net positive.
Yeah, net positive. There was, it's the person that's quoted in this article on Active NorCal, Marty Ralph, he's sort of the expert on these types of storms. He said, on average, there's hundreds of millions of dollars in damage for an AR5 storm. And looking back on it, we might have actually seen that with all the flooding, all the pictures of cars that crashed. There was this truck that, fell over on the Richmond Bridge.
That would be the scariest thing in the whole wide world to me. If that was in front of me, I would have a panic attack.
There was also a truck that somehow it got sideways and fell off a bridge in Tahoe, and luckily the guy wasn't even injured. Kind of crazy, but the picture's crazy because it's on fire, and all the different crashes, all the probably there's property damage. There were pictures out of the Bay Area, Santa Rosa, Mill Valley, that whole neighborhoods were flooded. So I don't know how they estimate these types of, how you combine all the different damage and put it into one number, but $100 million of damage, I would say that's probably there. It's probably spot on,
And maybe, and honestly, I've not heard a single person complain about the rain.
No, and no one's complaining.
Right.
We need it.
Right.
And let's be clear, because there's going to be some people in the comments section. I saw a tweet from this meteorologist who I really respect, who was talking about this is what climate change looks like, right? So you have 6 months of complete dryness, and then you have an absolute dump of, and it's breaking records, right? Sacramento broke a record for 212 days without any precipitation, and then broke a record for the single day precipitation.
Most rainfall in one
right.
day.
So it's extremes on either side.
Right.
And I know a lot of people don't understand that at this point, and so I like to mention it because it's exactly what they said climate change would look like. It's extremes on all sides. Obviously we don't know how this is going to move forward into this winter, but let's hope it continues to get us out of this drought. This storm took a big dent out of it, but we need more.
Let me ask you this, because I don't know this fact or whatever. Did anybody die in this storm?
Ooh, I don't think so.
Because if nobody died, come on. Like, I mean,
I don't think
the
so.
$100 million in damage. I mean, think about how much fires cost, you know?
There was, I am sure there were car accidents, but
I didn't hear about a single person dying because of the storm. I could be wrong. You know, I might not be the most up to date, didn't do the research on this, but when I was reading about it this morning, I was like, did anybody die? Because if nobody died, like, this is like the greatest thing that's ever happened. Even though it might cause $100 million in damage, like,
it's probably some people died in car accidents or what have you, but there probably would have been deadly car accidents anyway, right? So, sure. Again, net positive. Totally. I think, and you know, there were evacuations due to mudslides and all this stuff and the burn scars. I have not seen anything where there was significant damage done. But yeah, honestly, so much time and effort was put out in informing the public to, if you're in a burn scar, you better be ready to evacuate. If you're in Tahoe, you're going to get a lot of snow. You probably should be careful driving. If you're down in the valley, you should be careful driving. So everyone was informed, you know, significantly. So you can't feel bad for any of these accidents, which occur without storms. So again, net positive.
So, okay. So let's talk about like the totals of the rainfall, the snow. What did this storm bring to the area?
Sure. So first, you know, a lot of rain, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit, the records that were broken in the rain, but some places got up to a foot of rain.
In one day, pretty
much. In 24
right?
hours.
Yeah.
In 24 hours. Overall, there was probably some more. Snow-wise, you know, up to 60 inches at the very, you know, up above 10,000 feet.
Okay, so 60 inches, that's
5 feet.
That's a lot of snow.
That's at the very tippy top. I think most the ski resorts in Tahoe were about between 2 to 3 feet. Mammoth Mountain got 3 feet. There's probably a little bit above that, but you know, those typically sit around 7,000, 8,000 feet elevation. Mammoth, by the way, got 3 feet. They're opening this week. They just said, yeah, we're good now. Let's go. Let's go. I haven't seen any other ski resorts say that they're opening early, but, you know, and there's not a lot of base for the snow, but there's certainly 3 feet of snow. You could certainly figure out a way to get some runs going. So we'll probably see some more of that. Obviously, the waterways were huge. Like we saw flooding all over the place. We saw, you know, the Yuba River and the American River. You know, they basically went from almost empty to overflowing, essentially. And then the lakes. The lakes are sort of a big signifier. I think there's a lot of different elements to take into, you know, thought when you're talking about the lakes, but we could just go through them real quick because we have them right here on the website. So Shasta Lake from October 20th to October 26th rose 3 feet.
That's insane.
So it's a lot.
All of these numbers you're about to read are incredible numbers if you really think about them.
Consider this as well. They actually released this. So the CFS on the Sacramento River, it went from 7,000 CFS or 700 CFS to nearly 4,000 cubic feet per second. Essentially, that's the amount of water they're letting out of the dam. So because the temperatures of the Sacramento River have been so warm, they let out a ton of water to cool down the river and help salmon runs.
Yeah, not just salmon, but a lot of other fish as well.
So take that 3 feet with a grain of salt, because they were essentially taking the water that was in Shasta Lake and
you're saying it would have been significantly higher had they not let so much out of the dam just to relieve the Sacramento River.
Correct.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Now you go, and by the way, up there, kind of in the Shasta Cascade, they didn't see as much rain and snow as further down in like the Sacramento, Sierra, Eastern Sierra area. So a little bit further south, we have Lake Orville and Folsom Lake, which over the past week both rose 27 feet.
So that's an insane number to me. Now, obviously, Shasta Lake is going to be a bigger lake from a circumference there. You know, it's a much bigger, wider lake. And as we mentioned, they were letting water out of the dam. But raising a lake 27 feet in a 24 hours? Insanity to me.
Lake Orville was over a week or 6 days. Folsom Lake was over 24 hours. It went up 27 feet. And that's how bad these places were. There was no snowpack, so there's been no water flowing into them. And
for years.
Right. So you take that water, you funnel it down, not only into the lake, it falls into the lake, but also into all the rivers that are flowing in. And when you top out, it gets pretty darn high. So that's significant. It's significant. Hopefully that holds for quite some time. Trinity Lake was just like Shasta, rose 3 feet over the past week. Lake Tahoe rose a foot, which it's now back to above its natural rim.
Which I was just going to say, let's stop there because we talked about this last time.
Yep.
Which is now meaning that the lake is now refiltering itself. It's becoming cleaner. It's becoming a more healthier ecosystem. And we talked, I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was the mountain would need 800 inches of snow in order to...
A record-breaking 800 inches.
Would have needed it wouldn't have been able to be done in 1 year. We even talked about that on the podcast. And just with that one just massive, massive storm, there was just such a significant impact to that in just a week. We talked about this literally last week, and we're talking about it again. And it's just the relief of this storm just really... I can't emphasize it enough.
Yeah, and we'll end with Tahoe. Even there's a ton more anecdotes as far as rivers and lakes, especially on like the North Coast where rivers were literally dry and then they just came to life again. I saw a couple videos online that I thought were pretty cool. But in terms of Lake Tahoe, we talked about when it goes below its natural rim, it cuts off water to the Truckee River, essentially leaving it a stagnant. I mean, I want to call it a pond because it's one of the biggest lakes in the country, but it's a stagnant pool, right? And that's not good for water clarity and everything. So it reconnected with the Truckee River. The Truckee River's flows went from, 900 CFS to nearly 6,000.
Wow.
It went up like 800% in 24 hours from October 24th to October 25th. So they just started. They knew that the Truckee River was going to have some health issues based on not
like all of the rivers in Northern California right now.
It's not being fed any water from its source, so they just flushed that sucker. So pretty astounding. Now, from a big picture standpoint, looking 30,000 feet above ground here, these are still pretty low water levels, right? Shasta Lake is it's only 22% full. Lake Orville's 27%. Folsom Lake's 30%. So these, and those are low from historical averages as well, because typically this is where lakes bottom out. In the fall time, it's where, we haven't had the rain for the most amount of time. So, but Shasta Lake's, it's 37% of its historical average. So it's still much lower compared to where we typically see it this type of year. So there's still a lot of work to be done. But that was pretty phenomenal how all the water levels and the snowpack and everything was just revived with this one storm.
I was so ready to see somebody complain about the rain on some social media, and nobody did. I was so ready to just backhand them digitally, and nobody did. And I'm happy to see it because, I mean, growing up, nobody really likes rainy days, but in a significant drought time like this, we had 1 day of massive rain and then that's it. I mean, for a little bit, and it relieves so much stuff. So I love to see it. I was able to sit at home and really not do anything that day. So it was one of the perfect rainy days for me.
It's funny because I watched football. I sat there and I worked and I watched football. It's kind of my Sunday routine. And I didn't know the Niners were playing that night. I kind of turned off my TV and just relaxed that night. That Niners game during the atmospheric river bomb cyclone was pretty intense.
Totally watched it.
Did you? I saw a video of the porta potties, like the wind blowing them around the parking lot, and it was just I can't believe anybody would go to that game and sit through that rain. I mean, they have to play it; it's football, right? But kind of crazy to see that they actually had a sporting event in that.
Mike Tirico even joked like, this might not sound like anything we usually talk about in Northern California, but the rain is a significant issue. And it's like, that's totally exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Okay. Any last stuff about historic numbers, rain, snow wise?
Well, so rain wise, we had a couple different history breakers.
Yeah, the next story, 141-year-old all-time rain record shattered in Sacramento.
Yeah, that's a tongue twister. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So there were multiple records broken. The top one being downtown Sacramento rained 5.44 inches, the most ever seen in a 24-hour period. The previous record was 5.28, set on April 20th, 1880.
420-80.
420-80. So 141-year-old record broken, and that was from the torrential rain. There was also, what else was there? Blue Canyon, which is up near kind of Grass Valley, 10.4 inches in 24 hours. Insane.
Previous record being 9.33 from 1964.
Yes, and so that was, I think we kind of knew going into this was going to be a big, record-breaking storm, and we saw it for sure. What was really fascinating about these numbers that were released by the National Weather Service is the amount of the rain total for compared to the water year in 2020 and 2021, right? So 5.44 inches is 70% of what we saw our entire water year last year. So Sacramento only saw 7.87 inches in the 2020-2021 water year. We got 5.44 in just 24 hours. Climate change. Reading got 3 inches. That's 20% of what was seen the entire water year in 24 hours. What else is there?
Orville got 50%.
Orville got 50%. I mean, so this just shows, again, we're seeing these extremes.
Right.
Extreme without water, and then heavily water. So just kind of just crazy numbers. And I guess I'm fearful because what if we don't see rain again for a long time, and the water years are similar, right? Last year's water year versus this year's water year are similar, and we just go on this extended drought again. I think obviously just based on this, we're going to have a better water year. I don't, it'd be crazy to just go dry again. But those are pretty astounding numbers.
So I saw somebody say on Twitter, like, anybody that plays golf is a better weather guy than the majority. Like any guy that that plays golf will know when it's going to rain, exactly how long, and that's kind of been my life since I started playing golf. There's not any rain in the forecast locally in Sacramento until not this Thursday, but the following Thursday, and there's only a 40% chance as of right now. I'd love to see it continue to rain and build up all these snow levels and fill up all these reservoirs. But even if we don't get some for a little bit this was a huge relief.
Yes, huge relief. We actually golfed on Saturday right before the storm came in. We figured it out nicely. So
fun round.
So, but now these places are going to be blown out. Like everything's so wet. The soil, which has been dry, is just so saturated now. So, which is a good thing.
Well, okay, so pretty much everything we talked about was a good thing. Let's talk about the one kind of bad negative story with regards to this storm. Massive landslide closes Highway 70.
Yeah, so this is, I don't know how much I have to talk about this. I would say go on our website and look at the video of the drone footage, which shows this landslide. Huge.
Totally.
Huge landslide. I don't see how they open this highway anytime soon. This is it's basically right on the Butte County, Plumas County line. In fact,
You could see the sign.
the Plumas County line sign is literally right next to
intact, but like
Yeah.
5 feet away from where it gets crazy.
Yeah, so Highway 70 is closed between Jarbo Gap and Greenville Way. Caltrans is trying to clean it up, but this guy, Brandon Clement, went out there with his drone and got some incredible footage. There's huge rocks, there's trees, and it's all just laying across Highway 70, taking up a significant portion of the freeway. So
Yeah, they first got to clear it. The massive boulders are the big things, you know. I mean, the trees, not that big of a deal. I mean, these boulders are the size of, heavy machinery themselves. And so it's going to be tough to find things that are big enough to move them. I'm sure they will. But then they have to figure out what damage that did to the actual road itself. I'm sure that there's significant damage, and then that'll need to be repaired after they're able to clear it. So mostly, again, net positive storm, but this was anticipated, you know.
totally anticipated. No one was injured. There was just some traveling issues with people that can't drive on Highway 70. But it's kind of crazy to look at this overhead photo because I would say there's this big truck that's sitting next to this landslide. I would say you could fit like 5 or 6 of those big trucks across it. So what would that be? Like 50 feet or something? More than that, even 60, 70 feet across this landslide. It's huge.
Right.
Look, I'm sure Caltrans is going to put all their people on this and make sure it's ready to go soon enough. But those boulders are huge.
Massive.
They're going to have to, I don't know if you ever remember those videos from Yosemite, Tioga Pass, where these huge boulders would fall onto the road and they would literally strap them with explosives and blow them up because they cannot move them.
Right.
Which is pretty sweet, if you ask me.
Totally. We'll get some drone footage of that.
Yeah, but I don't think your drone would be safe in the air over that thing.
Whatever. I lost one in a tree.
Yeah, but some of these rocks are so big, I don't know how they move them otherwise. So dear Caltrans, if you blow up any rocks, you better take a sweet video of it because I want to see that.
All right, that's enough talking about this amazingly great rainstorm. But let me just
Net positive.
Let's go. Let's just
Better grab your umbrella. I'll make it rain. I'll make it rain in NorCal.
That song single-handedly saved us from imminent disaster, Bob. So thank you, everyone. Give a round of applause to Bob here.
You're welcome.
Thank
I appreciate it. Yeah. In other news.
There's other news.
There is other news. Now, this one is not a positive one. We got to talk about it, though. Officials reveal cause of death for the family who mysteriously died hiking in the Sierra.
Yeah, we obviously the storms, everything we're talking about this week, but we have to talk about this because shocking. It is a shocking revelation from the Mariposa County Sheriff. So essentially, Jonathan Garish and Ellen Chung, married couple, moved to Mariposa with their 1-year-old daughter
From San Francisco.
And their dog. And according to friends, they were experienced hikers, and that's kind of why they wanted to go to that area. You leave San Francisco, you go out to Gold Country, Merced River, all that good stuff. So August 17th, 2021, they went out on this hike on the Heights Cove Trail near the Merced River, and they never came back. Authorities went to go look for them. About 1.5 miles from their car up these switchbacks, they were found dead. And
including the dog.
The mom, the dad, the 1-year-old, the dog. And I think this kind of took everyone by, like, what happened? It was such a mystery. How could all these people, including the dog, die? You know, you would think one of the parents would survive or something, or the dog, at the very least, the dog. So there were a lot of hypothesis into what could have happened. Most people thought it was toxic algae because they had They had tested some of the waterways in that area. They had found toxic
That's what I thought it was.
Algae.
Well,
So
not
they
that
thought
I'm an expert.
No. That's what everyone thought.
I mean,
that's what everyone thought.
It's the continue. I apologize.
No. That's what everyone thought. Because they tested the waterway and they thought, okay, these people went swimming. They accidentally, however, even the dog, right? That explains the dog. No, it comes out they died from essentially heat stroke. They called it hypothermia and dehydration. They were found with a big bottle of water that was empty, and it's just so weird that all 4 of them died, and that's why it just has to be discussed. I think a lot of people were in our comment section saying there's got to be more to this, and I don't know. I don't see, it has to be what they're saying it is, right?
They did all the research. I mean, there's no reason for the experts to lie about this. And they say that day temperatures reach 109 degrees and it's only a mile and a half away from the car. It's like, it feels like it's such a short period, distance from safety, if you will. But that's why it's so weird to everybody. And so that's why it's so heartbreaking to see that this is it's the result of basically not bringing enough water on a hot day like this.
My assumption is they made a significant hike in and they were on their way back, right? And that's when they got the heat stroke. So yeah, they were close to the car, but if you're dehydrated and you pass out, they must have sat down and just didn't wake up, I guess. But no, I mean, there were so many theories. People theorized they were hit by lightning. People theorized there was some toxic gas leaking somewhere, some sort of suicide maybe. But no, in the end, it was just heat stroke. But it's just so weird to see 2 parents, 1 1-year-old, and a dog die from it. So I guess it's good that we have this closure with this family. I'm sure their friends and family are glad to have the closure, to know that it wasn't something bad. It wasn't something that was, I don't know, malicious in any way. It seems it's just really weird.
This is a lesson. Always bring more water than you think you're going to need.
They had an 85-ounce thing of water. Crazy.
Camelback.
Yeah, you would think that'd be a lot. I mean, that's a lot of water. And I think you also have to take into account where people are from, right? So San Francisco, it never gets above 80 degrees. And so maybe they're not used to that sort of heat. We grew up in Redding. It's 115 in the summer. We used to go hiking all the time. And we would always be by a river where we could jump in and swim. But nonetheless, and we always knew to bring a lot of water. That's super important. Or if you're our father, just chug a massive gallon of water before and not bring any water. But at least he's hydrated. So anyway, it's a real tragedy. It's unfortunate, but there's some closure. It's just you're right. It's a good lesson. Stay hydrated. Know the weather patterns to be sure not to go out and get heat stroke like that, because it's super sad.
And that's the news of the week.
Okay, that's it. So let's hop into our interview with Adam Marland. He, super cool story. He was the CEO of Michelob Ultra, the chief exploration officer, and we've been following him and sharing his photos for a long time. So let's go to our interview with Adam.
All right, we'd now like to welcome on someone who I've been trying to get on this podcast for a long time, but he has been busy acting as CEO of Michelob Ultra. He's also an incredible outdoor photographer and founder of WeDreamOfTravel.com. Welcome to the show, Adam Marland. How's it going, Adam?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me. And just to be clear, I'm not the CEO of Michelob. I was the chief exploration officer, so I don't want to lead anyone astray there.
Of course. Well, it was so funny because we actually wrote about this contest that Michelob did. They announced it. They were looking for their pure gold CEO, which I would categorize as sort of like the Willy Wonka golden ticket for outdoor adventurers, right? And they were looking for a photographer, and they were going to pay this person to travel the country and take photos, and you ended up winning. It was a nationwide search, and it just so happens that someone in our backyard won. So tell me about that whole process, what it was like applying, and how you found out you actually won.
It was about somewhere between 4 and 6 months from the time I put in my first application to the time I found out. So it was actually a really long process with a lot of waiting and a lot of it was weird. You wouldn't think you'd even like this would keep you up at night. 150,000 people applied. So yeah, it was a Willy Wonka thing. It's you don't expect anything to come of it. For some reason, I don't even usually enter these, but there was something different, and I don't want to get too meta with it, but like I don't, it just felt like the right time in my journey for it. I've been traveling about 10 years, and when this came across my feed, there's been a lot kind of similar along the way, but this just felt like the right time. So I decided I wanted it, and I applied. But beyond that, I got I dug in deep. I got every email for every single person I could find that worked for a marketing department for Michelob Ultra, Anheuser-Busch, Draftline, their sister production company. So I wrote to everybody. What I realized was I was okay not getting the job because I wasn't the right fit, wasn't the right personality, didn't have enough social media, whatever it was going to be, but not because I didn't get seen. And my thought was, oh, if I can get seen out of the 150,000, then it's just going to be a matter of fit, and I'm all right either way at that point. So yeah, I applied. I emailed everybody. And the first thing I found out, there was supposed to be that if you didn't hear anything by October, they'd probably moved on. So into November, I'd kind of started to give up on it. And then one day I just woke up to this email that said I'd moved on to the next phase. And from there, I had to do a field test. And very cool enough, my field test was 4 still photos that told the story. It was kind of obscure instructions, and they wanted to see if you knew how to read between the lines and take some vague marketing direction. Followed by a video that was approximately 1 to 2 minutes, saying why you would be the best fit for the Pure Gold CEO job. And I filmed all of the video, or almost all of it, and got my 4 shots all in the Northern California area in Shasta Trinity for the most part. So I'll have to get that stuff over to you. But I shot a lot at Castle Lake. It was the middle of winter. It was the middle of the pandemic. It was really tough to do. And this area was getting hit pretty hard, but got up to Castle Lake, hiked through the snow. And yeah, basically everything in the video is from there.
So what did they say set you apart from the other applicants?
So the next after I found out that my field assignment got me onto the next round, from then on it was interviews. There was I think 3 total interviews after that, each one about a month apart. So you really like every time you thought this is it, like, oh my, if I get this video right, and then it was like, oh no, okay, one more interview, and if I get that right, and then it was another interview, but what they said in the interview that set the video apart was just that I was what they were looking for. And I kind of read in between the lines. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but it's I think I had the experience, not just living van life, but living life. There's probably a lot of really young kids, and I know there was a lot of really much older travelers. And I think what they were kind of looking for was that young, active, young adult, maybe 30s, late 20s, early 40s, but kind of in that age group. So people who had experience living van life, experience doing photography, were in touch with social media because that was going to be a big part of it. And also realistically, not only could live in a van for 6 months and enjoy it, but had lived in a van for 6 months, because everybody thinks that's going to be amazing. But if you haven't done it, that's a small space for 6 months. So I think it was that. And they said the video was just what they were looking for. Beyond that, they didn't give me any specifics, but I think it was a mix. Our nature here is incredible. I'm not sure how many other people have access to Mount Shasta and Castle Lake and areas like that in their backyard. And the right mix of kind of fun, but also adventurous, not reckless adventurous backflips and stuff, just hiking to beautiful places and that kind of thing. So again, I think it was all just fit. I saw some of the other videos and they were awesome. I thought some were better quality than what I could produce. Photography is more my thing, but like I said, if I was the right fit for the job, that was going to be great. And if I wasn't, I was accepting of that. So sounds like it worked out.
Sure. It sounds like you did a lot of work like putting yourself out there and sort of trying to get ahead of the curve? Because obviously there's a ton of great photographers and adventurers and content creators out there. So setting yourself apart is really difficult. So what happened from there? Like you won, you're super excited. What did you win and where did you go and what happened?
Behind the scenes, I've been trying to get my fiance, who's British, into the country for a while. So this was huge news for us. This was what we finally had an employer behind us. We're both freelance, and it was really tough to prove finances and stuff like that. So all of a sudden, we had Anheuser-Busch as our employer, and that helped, and that helped us get her into the country as well. So she joined for the second half. That was the first thing. It was. I mean, there's just a moment where you don't quite know how to feel. Is this going to be the big door that swings open? Am I ever going to have to worry about finding gigs again? And the answer is yes. This ended up being a great 6 months, a lot of fun, but it wasn't as much as the contest was advertised everywhere. The results weren't so much, which kind of makes sense. I think everybody who knew someone who traveled and was a good photographer, everyone who had a grandson or a cousin was sending this thing to them and saying, "Oh, you need to apply for this." But then once somebody won, nobody was like, "Oh, hey, here's the guy that got the job you wish you had." So there wasn't the same level of like exposure as the winner as there was like for the search. And that was okay. But the job was 6 months. They were going to provide a van. They kind of whirlwind just flew me out to Ohio. I picked up a van. They handed me the keys after about 20-minute rundown of how everything worked in there. I was just hitting the road, and I had to drive about 4 days down to Big Bend, Texas. Everything was really, I guess, scripted might be the best word. The itinerary was very rigid. We were working as supporters of the National Park Foundation, so they weren't partners, but we were supporters of them, and they were helping us get permits and stuff like that. So because of that, because there's a commercial entity involved, it was 18 parks over 6 months, 3 parks per month. Everything before I ever left was already scripted, where I would be when I would be there, which was kind of one of the challenges. Photography is as much about conditions as anything else. Sure. So sometimes you get there and it'd be gray, or it'd be actually this summer I think it was 6 months of 150-degree heat. Like, that's obviously some exaggeration, but Death Valley 128, Joshua Tree 122, Vegas 115, Oregon and Northern California was 115 this summer when I was here. That I've never seen that in my life. So, but that was it. Just here's the keys, here's the job, go have fun, and kind of just set me on the way, to be honest.
So you said you went to 16 national parks, right?
It was scheduled for 18, 3 per month, but we did have one pull out, and we had a bit of rearranging to do on the fly, but it ended up being 17 out of 18.
17, gotcha. So, and I've seen a list of everything you've done. Go through one or two that sort of stood out to you, and sort of your favorites along the trip.
White Sands, as a photographer, was I'd been there once before, but I wasn't as into photography at the time. And going back there, I don't know if I was spoiled with the sunsets or if it was just having some practice with this type of thing, with landscape photography. But I loved it. Every time of day felt completely different, because the white sand, which is actually gypsum, it looks white, it's transparent. So when it's overhead sunlight, which is close to white, it looks white. But then as it comes down into sunset, it gets into these shades of goldens and yellows and eventually into purples and reds, and it reflects the sky. And I just found, between that and the textures of the sand dunes, I was every single night, 5 nights, I would just go out there for the last 3 hours of the day and just run around these dunes photographing. I was blown away by how much creativity you could there was to shoot and arrange different compositions. And we also just got unbelievable conditions there. Yosemite's my favorite national park, and I got to spend some really nice time there. My first time being there in the summer and getting up to Glacier Point. And it was the first park that my fiance Sophie was able to join me at after we hadn't seen each other for over a year. And finally, we not only were together, but first stop was Yosemite. So that was really, really special. And then,
Nice.
I mean, all the Utah parks are crazy. Like the Utah 5 are all just awesome. So.
Yeah, Utah is amazing. I I always say that's I'm trying to make Utah like our sister, the California like sister state, you know, because especially Northern California, there's a lot of similarities in terms of just the outdoors and the national parks and everything. So I'm really curious about van life because I think it's kind of grown in popularity in terms of like an idea. Maybe not so much, you know, people actually being able to pull it off, but this you know this magical idea of like I'm just going to hit the road and simplify my life. And what is van life actually like?
So I should preface, part of the reason I got the job, I think, is I started traveling. It wasn't even van life, station wagon life 10 years ago. Same kind of idea occurred to me, like just wanted this liberation and to try something different. Didn't know what else to do. So I just hopped in the car and started going. And it was a little station wagon long enough for me to sleep in the back, but essentially van life, right? Just even more basic. And back then, it was everything I think people imagine it's going to be today. The problem is because everybody's imagining this dream at the same time, rules have to follow trends, especially when it takes just one person to ruin something. So I think the magic of it is meant to be the liberty, right? If you were to romanticize the idea of van life, it's not the fact that you're living in a walk-in closet. That's not what appeals to people. It's the fact that you can wake up and go anywhere, anytime, or that you can just pull off for the night and sleep by that waterfall or by the coast or whatever. And you don't need a beachside home that costs a fortune. You can just wake up and roll down the window of your van and hear the seagulls. Like that's the romantic vision, I think. What's gotten challenging is everybody, like you said, it's become really popular. And also, like you said, not everybody's able to actually pull it off. And sometimes that just means they can't take it internally. But a lot of the times that means that they don't know what to do with their waste and with their van and with how do they get Wi-Fi or service when they need to. And it's because of some of the problems that have come from that, we're seeing it become harder and harder. You can't just pull off in most places. They all have no overnight camping signs now. If you are self-contained, then it makes it a little easier. A lot of BLM lanes will let you stay there. There's a lot of places you still can go. But I think the idea people have in their head that they're just going to be able to stay the night at Grand Canyon, a lot of them are in for some rude awakenings. You're not allowed to sleep in the national parks unless you have a campsite. Anywhere on the West Coast, Northern California through Oregon, you're not going to just pull off on the coast. You might get away with it, but there's going to be signs that say like you can't stay there because of the problems they've had. COVID was here, so you couldn't go into a cafe and get any work done for a long time. So that car was your everything. It was your home. It was your office, your transport. That was everything you had. So it's a lot of fun if you don't need much. And I think a lot of people, no matter what, will find out about themselves, like what they truly value. But it's fine for me. I've been doing it a long time and I really love it. It's gotten harder, but easier at the same time because you have more experience doing it. I would recommend, I would recommend people try it because even if it's not what you're looking for, you're going to learn a lot about your relationships, yourself, and what's important to you.
Yeah,
I an answer for you, huh?
No, I liken it to, and this might be a really bad comparison, but to like jail. Like you might not be worried about the physical altercations that you could get in, but the mental, part of it, I think is what's hard. Not having certain amenities that you're used to and being alone a lot and trying to figure all these little things out, these challenges that maybe we take for granted, right? And I think that's everyone sees the picture of the person laying in bed drinking the coffee with the beautiful mountain in the background, but not a lot of people think about what it takes to actually pull that off,
and how do you make that cup of coffee in your bed? It's not like you can't just plug in your hot water kettle and unless maybe you do have one and can do some instant coffee, but you can't just make coffee in the morning that easily. Even that's a challenge to get boiled water at 6 a.m.
You spill that coffee on your bed and that stain's going to be there for a while because you can't clean it properly. There's a million little things that people don't, think about. And I think you're right. Like just mentally, some people are just more ready for it, or just in their mind, it works better. What's one thing about quote unquote van life that people don't think about, that like, what's one thing that, you know, I don't know, that the normal person wouldn't know about what it's like to live van life?
It's really hard to have routines. And I don't think any of us realize how many routines we have until we lose them. And, you know, if you start to feel out of shape, you're like, oh, I really need to eat better. But that means pulling out the camp stove every time you want to cook a decent meal. And even that's, you know, usually a 1 to 2 propane camp stove. It requires assembly, and it requires you to be out of the wind and out of the rain. And not a lot of people are going to loan you some overhead, you know, canopy or whatever to cook out. So if the weather's bad, you're eating fast food, drive through, Walmart, whatever, or cold food all the time. And I think just your eating routines, your sleeping routines. If you're traveling for a while as the seasons change, it's getting light and dark different times. And if you're in a van and it's dark out, unless you've got, you know, one of these kitted out mobile home type things, if we're talking about like a more basic style, it's really, you can't go on that jog unless you don't mind not being able to shower afterwards for 2 or 3 days, maybe. And you know, being in a new neighborhood every day, a new area, even finding the bathroom sometimes, again, depending on your van setup. So trying to get any routine, which wasn't always a problem, and it isn't always a problem until something until you start to wear down. I think everybody has that threshold where they can do without. And some people it's a week, some it's a month, some it's 6 months, some it's a year. But myself, like as a personal note, even though I've done this a bunch of times, I've gotten older. Unfortunately, that's how life goes. You just keep getting older. And suddenly I can't quite go 6 months eating McDonald's and Little Caesars $5 hot and ready pizzas to try to save a buck. Like I feel sluggish. And if I get Taco Bell twice in a week, like that's it, I'm out. If I lose a whole day to that, it's like, so I think that is probably the biggest thing. It's easy to daydream about the moments, but it's kind of like any movie where like the dialogue is perfect and it's in a vacuum, and then the scene just cuts away, and you kind of don't have to think about like what would happen for those next awkward 45 minutes. That's kind of how it is. You think about that moment, and it's a beautiful moment, but you forget about the fact that you know, are waking up and you've needed to, you know, use the bathroom for a while, but it's a crowded place and you don't have one, and there's not one there, and it's COVID, so they're locked, and you're eating stale bread every day and kind of sick of it. So you forget about the challenges around it. And yeah, I think that's it. The lack of routine is tough.
That's so funny you say that, because I'm 35, and when I was, you know, in my late teens and early 20s, we'd go up snowboarding, and we'd get McDonald's every single time. And last winter we did it. We're like, okay, this is, you know, the routine. And like, I just felt like crap all day. Like, I'm just too old for it now. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, it's something you're right. It's like something you got to do at a certain point in your life when you can take that, you know, the beating of just not having a routine. And yeah, I completely relate to that. So now you're on the other end of this 6 months. Do you ever plan to go back to van life ever?
It's an awesome question, and it's one that I've been for 10 years now kind of answering, like, you know, when does that end? And I always told people when it doesn't feel like the most fun thing to do is when I'll stop doing that. And I think after this one especially, probably even a little bit before this one, but certainly the 6 month pushed me over the threshold of going from A to B to C to D is not really for me, I don't think, anymore. It's exhausting, and I start to lose the passion and the joy in the photography and the travel at a certain point. And I've become trying to be more self-aware when I'm shooting a sunset that should be fantastic, and I'm complaining that there's not enough color or that it's not as pretty as the last 100 places I've been to. Like, you get desensitized, and I think I'm kind of there probably for a while, but I still love travel. I still love photography. I think the plan going forward instead, though, will be having a home base, having a community we come back to, getting involved in clubs and kickball leagues, and having friends invite you over for a barbecue, and having friendships that are more than 2 days old. It's come to that phase for me personally. So I have a converted, an old used Yukon that my uncle basically gave me a really good price on. So I converted that, and it's a weekend warrior. We'll go off to the Sawtooth Mountains for a week, but then we're going to come home and we're going to work on those photos, and we can reflect on the experience and enjoy it, and work on our blogs and our photos. And then when we're ready, we'll pick a place we haven't been to, or one that we have that we want to go back to, and we'll go to that place, and then we'll come home and recenter. Potentially, if there's like a really far away place, we'll still do like maybe Australia and New Zealand, because it would make sense to while we're there. But for the most part, I think it's going to be more 1 to 2 week outings, as opposed to like these month on end where you you get a little worn down, I think. And it's a shame. You don't want to waste what should have been a really once in a lifetime moment, if the whole time you're there you're wishing you weren't. It's not something that you want to feel. So that's where we're at now, looking for a place, and gonna go A to B.
No, I relate to you 1000%. I started this company when I was in my 20s, and I'm in my 30s now, and all my friends are always like, why don't we go do stuff? Why don't we shoot some videos here? And I'm like, I run a business, and I have a wife, and I have a house, and wandering off and just going to do these adventures. It's nice sometimes, and I can, write it off to the business, but at the same time, I have other things to do. So, it's just a part of life, and sometimes your priorities change a little bit, right? And your joys change a little bit, and you slow down. So I relate to, even though I wasn't going as far as van life, I relate to you 100%.
No, to be clear, I mean, like, I think, I think travel is, van life will work for years for some people, and some will never ever. Like, a weekend will always be the right amount. But I wanted to just jump in there and say, like, even that idea of running a business, which it feels like we are starting to transition to in my 30s, I'm actually we have a blog that provides income, and we are getting gigs with, say, Michelob or other things. And it's funny, because the more I got into that, I think maybe because it's something we've created, just like what you've created with Active NorCal, that's a different type of fulfillment. And I'm finding I was looking forward to just getting home so I could work on these blogs and these photos. I was as much wanting to come back to the quote unquote job, to my business, so to speak, as opposed to shooting for Michelob, because I find building something to be fun too. I think, just like you, I'm 36, so about the same age, and I've entered that phase where friends want to go do like a club or something. I'm like, I want to see this number grow to this. I want to see success in this other thing. And, you've got a family. I want to see the kids, the wife, there's other things that bring you fulfillment. So I think we're kind of there as well. We're right with you, man.
Not only that, but like doing all the fun, like outdoor stuff, I get tired. I get sore. I just can't do it like I used to. So, you mentioned your blog and everything, and I want to get to that. I'm curious about sort of your beginnings. I know you live in Oregon, and how I was introduced to you is your photography of Mount Shasta, which we follow really closely. Mount Shasta is huge in our content, and your photos stood out as some of the best. I mean, if you look at your Instagram page specifically, those are some of the best photos of Mount Shasta you're going to get. How did you get into photography?
Well, first of all, thanks. That means even more when it comes from a local, from somebody who sees that much. So thank you. I truly appreciate it. I got into photography on accident. I think the same way anybody who travels falls in love with photography or videography. I was traveling first. I mentioned I just hit a station wagon. That's kind of a longer story in a different chapter that we probably don't have time to get into. But the short version is I had a bit of a catalyst for change in my life, and I didn't know what to do. I just knew what not to do anymore, what wasn't working for me. So I just started traveling, and then you wake up at the Grand Canyon, even though you maybe aren't supposed to be sleeping there, but you wipe the fog off the window. This is 10 years ago, and the Grand Canyon's in front of you at sunrise, or the Badlands, and some of these places I have from my first trips. And I would pull out this little $50 point and shoot somebody had got me, and I'd take a picture and I'd write all about it. And the picture just never did justice to the experience, the story that I was writing for my own journals, and like for anybody who wanted to read back then. and I wanted to get good enough to capture a sunset, to capture a moment. That's what it was all about. When I was telling anybody, or just looking back on it, not even having to tell kids or other people about my travels, just when I was looking back on moments in my life, I wanted the picture to better reflect the experience that I had there. So I wanted to get good enough for that. And it's just a slippery slope. You go to beautiful places at beautiful times and you're disappointed by what you bring home. Something compels you to get better. And then eventually I think that overtook even the joy for travel, was the joy for capturing moments and realizing I don't have to go so far, especially being from Southern Oregon. Crater Lake was one of the very last parks I went to out of the 60 something national parks. There was only 50 at the time when I started this, but it was like number 44 for me. And that's embarrassing. It's an hour and a half from where I live. Lassen Volcanic, I had been to on a family reunion when I was like 8, but never as a photographer. So I think what I realized through photography, after finding a joy for capturing moments and capturing nature, was the travel was fun. But what was nice to know is I didn't have to go so far to find those things, especially being in Northern California on the border of California and Oregon. We just live in stunning country. So that started the passion for it. And what started it as a livelihood. Did you see any of the Neowise photos? Is that one of the Shasta ones you were talking about from about a year and a half ago?
I saw your Neowise. Well, all your Shasta. I mean, we've been sharing your Shasta photos for years now. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Neowise was the big break, kind of, which I was working. I had to go get a job at a hotel. I was working graveyard shifts so I could run my blog and take pictures during the day and then go work overnights at the hotel. Because it just, sunsets don't pay, stars don't pay. You might get a print sale here or there, but it's not sustainable. You can't even get a lease because you can't show that income is reliable. So COVID happened and Neowise happened together. COVID forced the hotel to close and I got furloughed. Suddenly this comet was in our orbit for a month. I went out begrudgingly to Mount McLaughlin, just on the border here, and I shot it one night just to prove to somebody who was a friend who said I should go do this. I was like, you're not going to be able to see it. It's going to be this dot in the sky. It's not going to look like it. It's going to look the same as every other star up there. And I went almost to prove them wrong. I was kind of in a rut. And I had this unbelievable moment and an unbelievable shot to go with it that was pure, mostly luck. I know how to use a camera at this point, but I did not predict the scene I was going to get. I didn't know that it was going to rise right where it did. And that got me hooked. So my next night I went down to Shasta Lake at Shasta and I photographed Neowise right over Mount Shasta. And between those photos, it started to get a lot of attention. I started to get the fire back and I chased that comet all around California and Oregon for the next month, just shooting the crap out of that thing. Got a big break with a bioluminescent tide that came in one of my last nights of shooting it in Oregon. That photo reached millions. And I think that also is what got me on the radar for Michelob. So I went from having to work minimum wage at a hotel, living with mom and dad, trying to get my fiance in the country, trying to figure out ways to make this work, to this Michelob CEO thing, and now being able to call this a full-time livelihood. In about 18 months, it all just snowballed. But that's after 10 years of practicing the craft just out of pure joy for it. So that's the long version, man.
That's so funny because, life is so weird in that way where, I mean, if it weren't for the pandemic, you could have still been working at a hotel, and things always seem negative. And obviously the COVID was a negative, but when you get furloughed from that job, you're probably stressed and then all these good things come of it when you take your opportunity, right? So that's really cool to see. I mean, obviously, I saw all your Neowise stuff. That was amazing.
Thanks,
so was that sort of the first time you thought of it as potentially a business, a job, or had you been sort of building up to that beforehand?
I had hoped it would be. I think everybody thinks it's going to be easier than it ends up being. And every photographer that I've ever met thinks they're better than they are for the first couple years, and then thinks they're worse than they are at the second half of that journey. And it's because you take pictures of what you find inspiring, and then as you learn to post process, you process your photos to your liking. So of course you think the shot you took of Shasta Crater Lake is the best one out there. And there's a lot of jealousy about other people who are having more success because you think your photo's better. And there's a lot of learning. It doesn't help that I was 25 when I started doing that, because you just kind of brash at that age anyway. And then I kind of gave up on it after a while as a career, because I wasn't getting the success I thought I deserved at that time. And looking back, I'm embarrassed about most of those photos. It's just also the curse of any artist, is you look back at your early work and you always think you could do it better. And hopefully you can if you've been improving in your craft. I think when I met Sophie, my fiance, she had a huge Instagram following, and it made me aware that there was a different path to it. You didn't have to sell prints at the local Grants Pass art gallery or something like that. Like, there was this world of social media that maybe you could get some exposure with. So I got back into thinking this could be something. And that never really quite panned out either. We have tens of thousands of followers, but people overestimate what that number really does. It's largely vanity. You get a few opportunities, but it's not enough. It doesn't create any sustainable income. So we had started to give up on that a little bit. We tried to build this blog out because we like the idea of owning our platform, as opposed to Instagram, Facebook. You're leasing that space. If they ban you, or if you forget your password and they lock you out, you're done. All that work is gone. So we wanted to build our own. We wanted to provide more value, and we didn't want to have to rely on customers. We wanted to be able to just build something that provided income. So blogs provided through, the pop-up ads and all that stuff that everybody hates, but that pays bills. And we could provide guides for people. We pivoted to that and hoped it would do something. And I think right around the time we were starting to kind of give up on a lot of things is when all this just snowballed, when NeoWise, the pandemic, when everything kind of came together. And what's funny is even now, even having won this Willy Wonka golden ticket, we've got a couple bucks behind us for the moment, but there's this sort of anxiety that doesn't go away, that this might not be sustainable, that this might just be a moment. So we're still kind of like, even as I talk that answer through with you, I'm like, I still don't know if it's a livelihood or not yet. It feels like it should be and could be, and it is at this moment, but I don't know if the anxiety of it going away ever goes away.
Yeah,
is that similar for you?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, you have to take advantage of your opportunities. What was really weird for us is we decided we had to start covering the fires because it was impacting where you could go and everything, right? So places were closing down or places were burning, you couldn't go there. That was in 2017. We had no idea what was going to hit in 2018, 2019, and 2020. And based on our coverage, we're now getting national coverage. We're getting, millions of views all over the place. So, my whole thing, and I tell this to everyone, you just have to consistently do it until you get your opportunity. And sometimes that means you got to give up. I think that's part of it, or pivot and that sort of thing. But it's all about consistency, and then seeing your opportunity, looking it square in the face and going for it. You know what I mean? So
you asked about.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think there's a bit of delay. I apologize for that.
No, you're good.
You asked about van life. One of the other things that makes it tough, we talked about routines. Think about that routine of this, exactly what we're discussing right now. The consistency of creating, for me, photos that I'm posting to Instagram, Facebook, responding to comments, keeping on top of emails, keeping on top of blogs, and for you, keeping on top of all your socials and your physical mediums and everything that you do, the podcast and everything else. Imagine trying to do that from the back of a van while also enjoying what you're seeing and not having to feel guilty about the fact that there's an awesome sunset going on, but you're stuck in the van because you have deadlines to meet. You have consistency that you are trying to stay on top of. So yeah, that was a big part of it too, to be honest.
Well, I think the answer to that is you can't really enjoy it. If you want to do it and you want to make it some sort of business, it's really hard to enjoy that, the sunset, because all you're thinking about is how to put it out to your people and to monetize it and everything. Yeah, man, it's not all that people think it is. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of sacrificing. But if you can turn it into something and you can make a living off of it. That to me is what I always wanted to do. So so tell me about your blog, because for me that was, well, yeah, like you've been off doing your thing for 6 months, so I haven't seen as much Northern California content from you. So I wasn't paying attention until I looked at your Instagram page. It's wedreamoftravel.com. What do you guys do with your blog?
So we create travel guides, and we try to use our photography as kind of our advantage. It's mostly, we do all like the national parks, and pretty much anywhere we go, we usually try to write a photography guide or just a travel guide, but it always kind of has that photography. I guess the advice we give tends to focus on getting great photos usually from that place, because we know that even if you don't care about photography as a passion, even if you don't have a DSLR or some fancy camera, everyone takes pictures, and most people go to a place to get beautiful shots. So we thought that's kind of missing. A lot of them tell you how long the hike is and all that, but they don't tell you what time to go, what things to look for, how to make an image that your family actually cares about when you show everybody at the dinner table, or all your cousins or whatever. You know, when they're looking at all these photos on your camera roll, what are you going to do? When are you going to be there to make that resonate? So we try to create guides that focus a lot on that missing element. And mostly what we loved about it was, with Instagram or Facebook, really, it's supposed to be a vertical format. If you want success, you need to fill screen space. Vertical fills 80%, landscape, aka horizontal, fills 40%. So if you want to succeed, it has to be vertical, but landscape photography tends to be horizontal, landscape orientation. Certain colors work, certain contrasts work, certain this work. And we were sick of shooting for a platform. So the blog allows us to post photos that aren't Instagram worthy, but they're lovely photos. They're really nice photos of a beautiful place at a beautiful time. So we love that this gave us the ability to share our work without, again, being owned by a platform, not just in terms of they own our handle, they could delete us any time, but also their algorithm determines our success on that. Whereas with blogs, our success is determined by, you still have to play by Google and search engine optimization. By basically, if there's going to be a search, you got to play by the rules to get to the top of that search. But if you type in Mount Shasta Trinity National Forest right now, I think you're going to see ours on the first page there, because we've written a whole bunch of stuff about all the places you need to go see in that area, with some photography tips and that kind of thing. So yeah, that just brings us a lot more joy, feeling like we can shoot for us and provide something of value that's lasts longer than 24-hour window on social media. And that's kind of all it's about for us. And obviously it provides a more consistent income, which is nice.
Yeah.
Necessary.
So are these just like digital guides? Do people have to pay for them? Or are they just on your website?
All free. Yep, they're all free. Like I said, we ideally we didn't want our business model to ever require customers. There'll be places where that exists. We sell calendars once a year. We're doing a national parks calendar this year because we've just been traveling all those.
Where can people buy that? Where can people buy that calendar?
WeDreamOfTravel.com. If they go to the website, WeDreamOfTravel.com, they're on there. They're welcome to message me, email me, all that as well. And I love that. It's all the national parks. Unfortunately, I didn't get to the last one. It was on fire this summer, so we weren't able to get to that one. But we do have a couple from Yosemite. We got Fire Falls in there. We have a nice night shot, El Capitan, lit only by moonlight on a starry night in the winter. So we've got some other NorCal ones in there for your audience. But yeah, we didn't want to rely on customers. We wanted to be able to provide things the same way you do. Like, you don't charge for this podcast. Ideally, we wanted a similar model. We wanted the income to come from some affiliate links. If we recommend a camera or something and you decide you like that camera, that lens, we get some percentage if it's like an Amazon purchase. There's advertisements on the top, sides, and bottom. We get a percentage, based on the number of people who view our guides. We get some each month. But the good thing is this allows us to provide all that for free. Same with Facebook, post once a day as much as I can for free. With the idea that maybe when we do have a calendar, or if you find a print that's inspiring to you, or you want a workshop or private lessons, that's kind of where it trickles in. And our philosophy was find enough trickles to fill our bucket and let that be focus on the lifestyle more than the livelihood. Focus on doing what we love, which is travel and photography, and just hope that if we do that consistently, provide enough value to other people, the money will kind of trickle in enough ways to keep us going.
Yeah, that's my philosophy is most of the things you have to do are free, because people who like this outdoor lifestyle are typically on a budget anyway, and they can find it for free anywhere. And so I completely agree with that. So we're going to end on this. You mentioned the Shasta National Forest in your guides. And this is a Northern California podcast, so I got to put you on the spot. Name one place, name two places in the Shasta Trinity area that you would recommend for anyone that wants to visit.
I'm going to name two with a caveat. Well, no, I got two out of the top of my head. There's a quote I heard a long time ago from somebody that used to write for Lonely Planet. And they said the curse of the travel writer is that you change a place you love the second you tell people about it. And that's kind of true of photography as well. It's hard. I don't want people to hear the names of the places I'm going to give you and then be like, oh, here we go. It was already busy. Now it's going to be swarmed. So there is an element of responsibility that I think we have to have.
Don't worry, Adam. They already blame me for that. So.
All right, perfect. This one's not a secret. So Castle Lake is my favorite spot to shoot up there. And if you want to hike up, it's only about a mile, but it's pretty much a vertical mile up, and you get this crazy view of Castle Lake with Mount Shasta in the background. And ironically, you get that view from Heart Lake, but Castle Lake looks like a heart from up top. So everything's a little bit backwards there. But that is hands down my favorite. There's a lot of good waterfalls, and some have been access has been closed, so I don't want to necessarily start naming those off. That gets a little tricky. Some of them aren't really places. There's a drive, Highway 97, that goes around Mount Shasta, and a lot of people, I think, tend to stick to the 5, which is beautiful as well. But if you take that drive out towards Klamath through Scenic Byway, the Volcanic Scenic Byway Legacy, I think it's called. I might have those words mixed up, but you get views of the twin. You get views of the twin cones, and I don't think a lot of people, even people who live in Northern California, I don't think they always realize that there's actually 2 peaks there, and you get that angle as you drive out towards Klamath. You don't need a specific spot out there; just take the scenic drive, and you get most of my shots that you're talking about. I think were probably all taken along that drive in the spring and winter.
Yeah, most people don't know that there are 2 peaks. One is Mount Shasta and one is Mount Shastina. And you can't see it if you're coming from the south going north. You can only see it from the other direction. But it kind of puts into perspective the volcanic history of Shasta. I could go on forever. I know way too much about that mountain. Well, we're going to have to meet up one of these days. Castle Lake, I'll show you how to ice fish out there next time you're there in the winter, because that's a lot of fun.
I'm in.
They actually, they just did this, I think last weekend, they finally put signs up to get to Heart Lake. So it's an actual trail now, so you won't get lost on the way. Yeah, they're doing some great stuff up there in Mount Shasta. They have a really cool trail association. So but yeah, man, I'd love to meet you in person. We gotta do something in the future. How could people follow you? How could people know what you're doing? Buy your calendar? Like give us your spiel.
Ironically, because I use Facebook more than any other social platform, I find the audience there tends to be less people just looking to steal your locations, find that, or we can say get inspiration from your locations to be more optimistic about it. But Instagram feels like other photographers who want to know where they should go shoot, what they should do. And Facebook is people who just love nature and art. And I find that audience is a lot more embrace the artist a bit more. So Facebook, I actually just changed it. It has been We Own the Moment forever, but that got confusing. I'm now with Sophie, we Dream of Travel. So it's now just Adam Marland Photography. You've caught me at transition, because Instagram is still technically We Own the Moment, but I am working towards getting it. I found people didn't know what We Own the Moment Photography is. That a business? Is it a reshare account? Or are you just sharing other people's photos? Is it you two, like me and Sophie, or is it just me? So it was confusing, and it was even more confusing now that we run We Dream of Travel as well. So Adam Marland Photography, soon to be on Instagram, currently on Facebook, and We Dream of Travel for the calendar, for our travel guides. And if you want to get in touch with me, any of those three work.
Awesome. Well, I'm stoked for you, man, and I'm stoked for everything you got to do. And being the CEO, I think it's pretty cool to put on, wherever you're going to put that on your resume or your handle or whatever. I think that what you did was pretty cool, and congratulations. And yeah, man, stay in touch. We'd love to keep up with what you're doing and see your blog grow and see your photos.
I really appreciate you having me on, Zach. It's been a lot of fun. I'm going to send you some shots, whichever ones you want for your website, whatever. We'll get you those that you can use as well. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity. It's been fun.
All right. Big thanks to Adam, he's a cool story. If you're not watching this and you're just listening, one of our signs just fell right behind Bob. Are we just going to keep going?
Yeah, keep going. We're professionals.
Yeah, I'm never good at hanging these things. So there you go. It's back up. Anyway, thanks to Adam. So I'm always fascinated with van life because I think van life is so hyped up on social media and YouTube, and these people get all these followers, but it kind of looks stressful, and just living without regular amenities probably sucks. And just like Adam said, the older you get, the more you don't like it. Sure. So thanks to Adam. Go follow him on all his accounts. But that was fun talking to him.
Yeah. I don't think I could live in a van like that. I remember when in our 20s when I would love to go backpacking, and I still love backpacking, although it's been a while since I've gone. I've always been like, man, it'd be so cool to live in a van like that. But honestly, having an established, well-functioning bathroom is and kitchen for me as well. I mean, those things you would have to almost go without.
The bathroom, the kitchen, like you said, you say you want to eat healthy and you want to eat good stuff, but it's so much easier just stopping at fast food. And I think it's, if anyone wants to do it, I think it's really cool to do in your 20s. But once you're getting a little bit long in the tooth, it becomes very, very hard. I probably couldn't do it in my 20s. So, yeah, more props to him, but he seems like he's more a home-based guy now, so that's good.
So kudos to Adam.
Yep.
And I think that's it. Anything else we got?
Yeah.
We hit some profound numbers.
It's kind of this weird confluence this week because we hit some milestones this week. What did we have? We hit 100,000 on Facebook, 100,000 followers on Facebook, 50,000 on Instagram, and 1,000 on YouTube. We got our YouTube crowd out there. Thanks for following. You're a small and feisty bunch, but I think most of our YouTube followers are Lemurian fans. But that's
we welcome them.
But yeah, man, it's cool to see. It's so weird. January 2014, we came out with our first print issue, which is this snowboarder right here. You can't see it on the camera, but and we did that. We did print for 2 years, and now we literally reach tens of millions of people online every single month. So it's been this weird journey that I've really enjoyed, and it's been fun to grow and find new people and find what our audience likes. Like weather, we talk about how this has turned into sort of a weather podcast, but that's what people in our demographic really want to hear sometimes. So that's what we give them. But it's been a fun roller coaster of a ride.
We also had our most downloaded episode.
Yeah, we had our most downloaded episode of this podcast.
By a significant margin.
From Robbie Burns last week. I think that will only continue, I think, for, a few different reasons, which we won't go into. We really shot up on our listens on this podcast, which we've been doing for, a year and a half now. This was our quarantine podcast that we started, and now we're out of quarantine and we're still doing it. So we hit some significant numbers, and we're going to keep going, and which is great because now I know we're about to get a big sponsor. That's the goal. But
we got a new comment. I think it's new. I don't know if I've read this one on, it's a review. Also, somebody gave us a 4-star review.
Trash.
It's the only one though, but, 4.9 rating out of 5. I mean, not bad.
Not bad.
Not to brag, but we got this one. I don't know if I've mentioned it or not. Love this podcast. Cool stories about the great Californian outdoors by entertaining podcast host Zach and Bob. Thanks for the entertaining show. That's Steve Moth.
Huh. Thanks, Steve.
Shout out Steve Moth.
Shout out Steve. Hey, give us a review. We'd really appreciate it. It's funny because we keep moving to different mediums, right? Like my whole thing is I want to be everywhere that our audience could be, which means we're on TikTok, which means we're, it took us a little bit longer, but Instagram, we're pretty big on Instagram now, and we've always been big on Facebook, but podcast was our next frontier, and it's starting to catch a little bit. I think it's hard to find new podcasts. Like I find that all the time where I'll find a podcast and I'm like, how have I not been listening to this? But it's just the quote unquote explore page of podcasts in general, wherever you get your podcasts. It's kind of hard to find. So I think people are slowly finding us either through social media or, through referrals or whatever from friends. But it's getting there. And I know there's like 1 million podcasts out there now. So I do appreciate people listening to us. And I do think we found a really good niche of people that like our type of content. And I'm just, thank you for supporting us. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so we got some more milestones to hit now. 100K on Facebook, 50K on Instagram. I think we could double those by the end of the year.
That's
by the end of 2022, sorry.
No, right. I knew what you meant, but let's go. Let's do it.
Well, we've seen significant acceleration because as soon as you get, once you get like 2 followers, then that 3rd follower is a lot easier. And once you get that 3rd follower, that 5th follower is easy. So it like exponentially grows. So I was just shocked at how many new followers we got in the last week. And I don't even know what the number is, but, and, we got a lot of people on our website reading our stuff. And so it's a fun journey. We got our future is good. We got some fun stuff coming up. We're going to be launching a membership program at some point here soon, and that's going to be fun. So we got a lot of cool things in the pipeline. So keep following, keep supporting. We appreciate it. We'll keep shooting you some fire content.
That's right. I think that's it for this episode.
Is that it for the episode?
Yeah.
Okay. Was this a long one?
No.
Okay. Good.
Pretty average.
Well, thank you for listening to the Talking NorCal podcast. Once again, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Facebook. I'm going to have trouble remembering that.
It's a lot of mediums.
It's a lot of mediums. We're also on YouTube, both Talking NorCal. You can see the whole episode in its entirety. And Active NorCal, we post the highlights of each show. Also follow us on social, both Talking NorCal and Active NorCal. We're everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Follow us. Once again, we appreciate the support. Stay dry out there, folks, and keep rain dancing. Let's hear one more.
Let it rain!
We're only happy when it rains, because we really need the rain in NorCal.
And remember, stay active.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and Darren knows how to kick it down in Santa Cruz. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little mental when we visit Sacramento. Yeah, we're NorCal, we're hella NorCal. And we protecting nature's bounty when we visit Humboldt County. Yeah, we're NorCal, we're hella NorCal. And me, I'm hella cool, cause I live in Sebastopol. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal. And you know that we got